Hey everyone, my name's Ryan. I'm a fourth year CS and math major, and today I'll be doing my TA teaching demo for information security on hashing and encryption. So I'll first start by talking about the big picture, the attackers and defenders and the security mindset. So in security, it's a game between attackers and defenders. And for the attackers, they're just trying to find and exploit any weaknesses for gain. So this could be for information or for money or just anything else you can imagine. And for the defenders, they're just trying to prevent attacks and keep systems secure. So their opponent is just the attackers and they're just trying to defend their systems. And today we'll be talking about hashing and encryption. These are methods for secure communication and secrecy, which is a big part of security. So I'll start by talking about hashing. Hashing is the process of applying a fixed hash function, h of x, to transform arbitrary length data into a fixed size digest, which is for some fixed input n bits. So because each bit has two possibilities of 0 and 1, there are a total number of 2 to the n possible digests possible. So if you look at the desired properties for a hash function, we want h of x to be a deterministic function, which means that given the same output or input, it will produce the same output every time. And it's also infeasible to reverse, meaning it's one way, which we'll get into later. And the purpose of this is for data integrity. So we'll also get into this later, and password storage. And so for strong hash functions, what we want are the following three properties. We want pre-image resistance, meaning it's one way. So finding the pre-image of x of a given digest d is infeasible. So what that means is finding x such that h of x equals d is very computationally difficult and just not possible, really. And now we talk about second pre-image resistance. So given x1, it is infeasible to find a distinct x2 where h of x1 equals h of x2. So for instance, that means finding some input that also matches the output that you're given. And now we talk about collision resistance, which is it's infeasible to find any distinct inputs x1, x2 so that h of x1 equals h of x2. Collisions exist because the total number of possible inputs far exceeds the 2 to the 256 possible outputs, or 2 to the n possible outputs for some generic hash function that produces n bits. This is because you're taking any length input. This could be length 1, length 2, up to any arbitrary length. So there's far more inputs possible than possible outputs, so that's why there will exist some collisions. And I'll talk about some examples. So this would be an example of a bad hash function. If you look at, let's say, f of x equals x squared, as we talked about on the slide, let's say you look at the pre-image of the value 4. Well, there's a set here, but the two possible values I can map to 4 are the values 2 and -2. Notice that this is very easy to compute, and that's not something that we want for a hash function. So again, finding the preimage is very simple for this function, and the second preimage and collision resistance properties do not hold, and it's closely related to the first preimage property not holding. And so if we look at the second example, I ran a SHA-256 on text and test respectively, and it produced vastly different outputs. So SHA-256 is considered strong by modern standards, and again, similar inputs provide drastically different outputs, so it's hard to reverse the process and guess something that's similar to the output that you've been given. And now I'll move on to encryption. So encryption is the process of making a message unreadable to anyone except for those with the proper keys. And the key idea here is that it is reversible, meaning the proper key can turn an unreadable message back into the original one. So an example of this from ancient times is the ciphertext, and you can feel free to look more into it on your own time. And it's focused on confidentiality, so meaning you keep the message M hidden from an eavesdropper. And there are two main types of encryption. The first one is called symmetric encryption, where one shared secret key is used for both encryption and decryption. That makes it fast and efficient for large data. Now, for asymmetric encryption, there are two different keys and they're linked mathematically in some way. So there's a public key and there's a private key. The public key is used to encrypt the data, and the private key is used to decrypt the data. And I know this is on a high level, but the are beyond the scope of this video, and you can feel free to look into this on your own time as well. And now comes a big question. So how do you securely share the secret key with another person in symmetric encryption? Because to actually communicate with someone else securely, you need to first establish this secret key. For asymmetric encryption, this problem is not existent because the private key is just private. You don't need to share it at all. And so that leads us to key exchange, which is most widely implemented through the Diffie-Hellman protocol. So symmetric encryption requires a shared secret key. And how can it be shared securely? Again, Diffie-Hellman is the solution. So Diffie-Hellman key exchange is a protocol wherein two distinct people can have a public conversation to derive a shared secret key. The details are again left out of this video, but you can feel free to look into it on your own time. And so now I'll just discuss the similarities and differences between encryption and hashing. So hashing, again, it's hard to reverse. The key, you don't really have a key. The purpose is for integrity, password storage, and attackers are trying to find the original input. For encryption, it is reversible using those two keys. The key is obviously required, as we discussed. The purpose is for confidentiality and secrecy of communication, and the attackers are trying to find the secret key in this case. And so now I'll finally get into the applications of each in slightly more detail. So hashing, two of the main applications are data integrity, which is making sure a file, such as a software download, hasn't been changed or corrupted, so you don't have some virus installed on your computer. Now, the second is also secure password storage. So you want to store password hashes, not plain text. So if someone gains access to your password database, you don't just have all the passwords lying out so that they can read it. And you also want to have something called salting, which you can look into on your own time again. But for encryption, confidentiality is the biggest application. So securing messages, web traffic through TLS, which is secure HTTPS, and protecting files on a lost or stolen device, those are the biggest applications of encryption, and communicating securely again. And for additional resources, feel free to look at these that I've shown you below. And of course, take CS 3235 at Georgia Tech. It's probably one of the best resources. And here's the summary. Again, hashing is one way, meaning it's very hard to reverse, so it's irreversible, and it's used for integrity and password storage. For encryption, it's reversible using these keys, and it's used for confidentiality and keeping a secret message hidden from eavesdroppers. And the biggest point to make is you want to use the right tool for the right security goal. Thanks for watching, and like and subscribe. All right, thanks.